Welcome to Mountain Man Explore the Truth. Today we welcome on Cheryl. Cheryl will be telling us about her encounter with Bigfoot and some paranormal stuff and more. It's going to be a really good show, so stay tuned and listen. And if you had an encounter, please email me at mountainmanett@gmail.com. Again, mountainmanett@gmail.com. Or you can private message me at Blake Hotel on Facebook. So look for Blake Hotel. The last name is spelled Botel. And what you can do to help the show is to rate it, follow it, comment, and share it. I sure would appreciate it, guys. Bear with me, we'll be bringing Cheryl on. Today we welcome on Cheryl. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Let's just hope this goes smoothly. We tried this a few attempts. All right, let's get right back into that Bigfoot encounter.
Okay, so this was about in 1978. I lived in Grants Pass, Oregon, and my mother and I were coming back from Medford, heading north on I-5 at the first exit, Foothill Boulevard exit of for Grants Pass. And I normally take that exit, but for some reason I kept going straight. And just as I passed the exit, I noticed this large animal type thing, hairy thing, running across the freeway from the south side to the north side. And so it was from my left to my right. Anyway, this thing was running on 2 feet. It was very big, very tall. It had to have been at least 8 feet tall. Reddish hair. Its arms were hanging down by its side, and it was running flat out type, across the freeway. And I took my foot off the gas because I didn't want to hit this thing. Anyway, it turned and it looked directly at me and kept running. And when it looked at me, I noticed, I remember a lot of things. It was just a few seconds, but its arms were down by its side. It wasn't, the elbows weren't bent like we not run. It jumped down over the side of the freeway, and then we were going over the overpass. So it was a good 20 to 30 foot drop where it would have jumped off onto a hillside. And so I didn't see it after it jumped, but we noticed that we turned and looked again, and it was running up this very steep hill. And there's no way, too many things that I remember about it running. I could see muscle movement. I saw its cheeks jiggling as it was running. Its face was like a dark gray color. I saw the palm of its left hand, and it was gray as well as it was running. And it was barefoot, obviously. It didn't have shoes on that I could see, but it ran very fast. It had a very long stride. And when it looked at me, I was in shock. It was so enormous. It wasn't really bulky. It was kind of thin, more on the slender side, but it was so tall. I was just like, there's no way it could have been a human on stilts running like it did. And when it jumped over the side, I just thought, oh my gosh, they would have broken an ankle or something if it was a human. But it kept running. We saw it, running up the hill very fast, and I was stunned by it. My mom, I know she believed what she saw too, because she said to me, "We'll never speak of this to anyone." And for years, I never told a soul. But and she's gone now. And it really wasn't until after she was gone that I started talking about it. She died in '99, but yeah, it was a crazy experience. It changed me. It absolutely changed my life. Once you see one of these things, it just changes you. I had another experience in the early 90s. The early 2000s. This was after I got married, and I had a couple kids. I think they were around 3 and 4 years old. We all went camping on the family gold mine in Glendale, Oregon. And we were in tents. And the first night, now we were a little over a mile back off one of the forestry roads. So we were like really back in the woods. And at nighttime, we heard this real heavy footsteps. It was shaking the ground. And my then husband we had our kids between us. And I didn't want the kids to wake up and make any noise because I didn't know what this was out there. I knew it wasn't a bear. Bear don't walk heavy like that. It wasn't a deer or elk because they don't walk that heavy. And this thing was on 2 feet. I could tell it was on 2 feet. And it just shook the earth as it was walking around. I had whispered to my husband, "What is that?" And he just said, "Shush." And we had weapons, but I knew that what I had wasn't going to take care of anything that was out there. But in the morning when we got up, we noticed the dirt was all ruffled up. We didn't really see any footsteps because it had also rained, and it was like drying out at the same time. So there really wasn't any footstep. It was very dusty type dirt where we were camping. Anyway, I don't know what it is, but I'm pretty sure I know what it was. Because there's just nothing that I have ever encountered that walked that heavy. And I grew up in a family that went hunting all the time. We used to camp in tents and stuff like that. So I've heard all kinds of animals. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I know what it was though.
Sure sounds like it was a Sasquatch hanging around that area.
Yeah. My father-in-law had even mentioned in the morning, he said, "Did you guys hear that Bigfoot?"
You
And
knew.
I kind of looked at him kind of funny and chuckled, a nervous chuckle, and I was like, anyway, he just kind of laughed it off and he went about his business, but that's what I think it was.
Hmm. So the first one you saw, it had reddish hair. Was it kind of long or short?
It wasn't real long. It was kind of like, it didn't have like long wispy hair. It was more of a shorter cut. And I think that's why I could see muscle movement.
Hmm.
Because I do remember like his back was hairier, his chest was kind of hairy. I say he because I'm pretty sure it was a male. Um, but his back was pretty hairy, but I could still see like shoulder blades and muscle moving around. His arms were swinging a little bit, and every time they would swing, I could see muscle movement. Just the few seconds that ran in front of us, I just noticed. I go back and I play it over and over in my mind, and I realize I noticed these different things. You know, it's amazing what you can retain. In just
Mm-hmm.
a few seconds of seeing something. So, um, but it just absolutely changed me. Absolutely changed me.
It made you a believer. So that's pretty
A-
cool.
Absolutely did, because there is no way. I know that there's no way it was a human being in a suit running. I
No.
don't know of any
Hmm.
humans that are that tall, and they would have to be on stilts, and there's no way it could have run with that stride and jump over the side and keep running up a hill.
Yeah, especially if you can see the muscle movement and all that. You can't do that in a suit.
I remember his cheeks jiggling. I remember the cheeks jiggling as it was running.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Um,
It's almost
yeah,
like it lost some weight, or maybe
yeah, because it wasn't skinny. It was lean, but it was like not real bulky like you see,
hmm.
these pictures that people depict them as. So, um, yeah,
That's
crazy.
definitely that's definitely interesting. And you said the eyes look like they were kind of black, or
hmm
that's interesting.
I don't remember seeing the the white of his eyes, the
Well, it
sclera. I
happens
don't
so
remember seeing
fast.
that.
I get it. If it happens so fast, it'd be hard to, get good detail. And that's what a lot of times happens with these encounters. It happens so fast that you can only catch what you can, in that moment.
Yeah, yeah.
So I say you saw
Uh,
a Bigfoot.
I say I saw one too.
So, and I think you definitely had one around you during that camping trip.
Yeah, I think so too.
So,
Um, and if I could share my then husband, when he was a kid, he lived in Grants Pass as well.
hmm
He and another friend were up on their property. They lived on a mountain there outside of Grants Pass, and they were just doing what boys do up in the woods, you know. And
hmm
they had found some surveyor tape on the ground. They were picking it up and they were just playing with it. They came across this, like they called it a chair. It looked like a chair, and it was made out of branches and twigs, and there was green foliage in it. They said, like from a tree, and it was all woven together, and it looked like a chair. And they were sitting in it, and they noticed it was really big and stuff. They had dropped their surveyor's tape and stuff. They were too fascinated with the chair. Anyway, they went down. When they went back home, they told his dad about it. And the next day, his dad said, "Take me to where it is, show me this chair." So they took him back up there. And when they got to it, the surveyor's tape was woven into the chair.
wow.
So I said, I asked him, "Did you see any hair around there or anything like that?" Nope, they didn't see anything, but they thought it was pretty weird. They said the chair was 4 feet wide. So, and it had like a backing on it, woven out of these branches.
That is interesting. That,
Yeah.
yeah, I wouldn't say that would have been a human. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's
And it was
interesting.
just like, it was out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, it had to be. Yeah, I don't know. That's
Uh,
it. Sounds like I hear a lot of people have an activity going on in Grants Pass. I could definitely see that happening. Or how thick the forest is over there.
yeah. And I have heard a scream camping down on the Illinois River around Onion Mountain in south of it's almost to Cave Junction, Oregon. Anyway, we were camping one night. We were out gold panning, and we heard this scream. And I've heard mountain lion scream, and that sounds like a woman, uh, calling or screaming. Um, I've heard coyotes yipping and squealing and stuff, and I've heard timber wolves. I've heard there's sometimes elk will make a weird noise, and this was nothing like I had ever heard before. And we had two dogs. We had an English Mastiff, a 200-pound English Mastiff, and a little Yorkshire Terrier. And when we heard this screaming, um, the dogs did not bark, they didn't growl, they didn't make a sound. Matter of fact, they were trying to get in under the seats in the truck. And whenever we would hear a cat screaming or coyotes or something, they would growl or bark, and we'd have to try to keep them quiet, because they're just calling out saying, "Here I am, come eat me." But when we heard this scream, my dogs did not make a peep. They were terrified. So, I've heard before that dogs, they know the difference, and they don't, they're fearful of these things too.
Yeah, they do. Dogs do definitely sense things better. I think certain breeds do a better job at knowing what's around them. And yeah, it's very interesting because I've heard stories where people go out hiking and their dog doesn't even know that something's there. Like a Sasquatch, for example, because the guy showed a footage later on going, I can't believe my dog didn't see that because he saw like looked like a family group of these things there, and
Mm,
that was just a regular. What kind of dog was that? Just a regular like I think it was like a Jack Russell or something like that if I remember right. And those dogs are pretty damn smart and they can smell things, but it did not acknowledge it. Maybe it knew it was there and just didn't want nothing to do with it. So I don't know. That one's
yeah,
interesting. But I do hear a lot of people saying German shepherds and hound dogs seem to know these things are around.
right.
So
And it
that's
was
interesting.
just, we kind of laughed it off because here's our 200-pound Mastiff that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't fearful of anything, just trying to get in under the front seat of the truck. And there's no way he could have fit, but he
Oh,
was just terrified with this
he definitely
screaming.
knew something was there and he didn't recognize that sound. So
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I had told you I listened to your episode with Ron Moorhead,
Mm-hmm.
and with the Sierra sounds, and there's one part in it where they make this vocalization that it was kind of muffled sounding, but it almost sounded like a muffled scream,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I heard when I heard him talking about that, and you played that this speak at the end. I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, that's the sound I heard.
Yeah, I kind
And
of
it,
just snuck that in there for people to hear. And some were like, "Oh, I didn't even
yeah,
know that was there."
and I've heard the Sierra sounds, many times over the years. But it never resonated with me before this time.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
Yeah, those sounds creep me out a little bit because it definitely sounds like a different language, and it just doesn't sound like something that a human can do, you know. And
right,
it just
yeah,
the frequency to it just sounds different, and I was very very interested in that, going whoa, so I'll listen to it over and over because it just sounds like a conversation going on.
yeah. That's what it sounds like to me. And it's like, I believe that they do have their own language. I mean, everything communicates with all species of everything communicate with each other in some way or form.
Mm-hmm.
And why can't they have their own language? Yeah, I believe that. Totally believe that.
Yeah,
So,
birds do it. Everything does it
yeah,
in their own way.
everything. Yep. Uh, every living thing communicates in some form, and like Ron Moorhead was talking about the quantum physics with the frequency, we all vibrated at a different frequency. And I think that explains how Sasquatch is like the hide and seek champion of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I never have really believed that they come in through a portal or something like that, but I'm open to listen to everybody's opinion about it. But I now, listening to Ron Moorhead talk about that they vibrated at a different frequency, it makes so much more sense to me that they can appear and disappear. They like cloak because of the frequency that they vibrate at. That just really, that was eye opening for me.
Yeah,
So
the portal stuff is just, I don't know, it just really got me interested in the portal stuff because it's like, yeah, I don't know, that seems too science, like sci-fi type stuff, and then you're like, you know what, it's could be possible. That's why I leave my mind open to everything because we really don't know, and
I
uh,
do believe in portals. I
yeah.
I absolutely do, in the paranormal.
Well, it took
Uh,
me a bit to believe, but I definitely believe it.
well, I had told you before, I've had many paranormal experiences in my lifetime too. And I do believe in portals. I've seen portals. I've thought of another thing that my kids and I went through. There was a portal. They saw it, but I didn't. And I was about to walk into it, and they grabbed me and pulled me backwards to keep me from. And we were in an antique store of all places, and we had come across this one section, and I felt very uncomfortable. I said, I don't like it in here for some reason, guys. And my kids are very sensitive. I'm very sensitive. Anyway, I had looked up. It's like somebody grabbed my head and just turned it upwards. And I looked up, and there was this Necronomicon up on the top shelf. And I was like, that's why I don't feel comfortable here.
That's
And
crazy. Yeah. Wow.
yeah, and then when we went upstairs, and we walked into this kids section, these antique toys and stuff like that, and I said, "Oh, look at, it was all bright and colorful." And my kids just, I remember both of them grabbed my arms and pulled me backwards, and I almost fell down on the ground. I said, "What are you guys doing?" And they said, "You were about to walk into a portal." And you know what? It was right above where that Necronomicon was.
That is crazy. That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's
Um,
definitely get into more of your paranormal experience. I'd love to hear it.
Well, I mean, my mother, I think, she was very spiritual. I'm not going to say religious. She was a God-fearing woman, but she was very spiritual rather than religious. And uh, we just grew up in a house with we had a rocking chair that used to rock on its own. Um, I witnessed it many times. I was never fearful of this stuff because I grew up with it.
Wow, a rocking
And
chair move. Sorry, just a rocking chair moving on its own. That's all. That
yeah, it would rock on its
wow.
own. And we tried to get our pets to sit in it. We'd put a pet in it, they'd jump right out. No, no, none of our pets, cats or dogs, would not sit in that chair. And as kids, we were told not to sit in this chair because it was an antique. It had the date of the chair carved on the back of it, which was 1791.
Oh
My
wow,
brother still has that rocking chair.
that is cool. There's
Yeah,
definitely some kind
and
of history behind that.
um, anyway, and then I have always seen spirits. Um, the old, the movie, and it's kind of a joke with me because I do see dead people.
I remember you
But
saying that. Yeah.
I see auras all the time. It's just something normal for me because I've always had it. My mom encouraged it in both my brothers and I. Um, and I have had a lifetime. I'm 64 years old. I have had a lifetime of paranormal experiences that I probably could write a book, but and I've encouraged my kids. Uh, they're very sensitive. They see things. Um, gosh, some of the stuff. My brother has a um, what is it called? 8 millimeter video reel of my parents and a bunch of friends having a party, and there's this card table in the middle of the living room. They had all the chairs pulled back away from the to the walls, and somebody would walk by and put a finger on the corner of the table, and it would tip up on one leg and it would spin. As long as somebody would was touching it, the table would spin. And I remember seeing it when I was younger. I had asked my mom and dad about it, and they were like, "Oh, it was just a game that we used to play." I said, "Were there? Did you guys have fishing line or something?" Nope. And they didn't want to talk about it. I don't know why, but there's this whole videotape. It's like an hour long. It's so crazy. Everybody would just walk by and somebody would touch it and it would tip up, or it would tip on one, on two legs, or one leg, and it would spin, or it would rock back and forth. Um, it was crazy, just a crazy video. I wish I could get a hold of it, but I do believe that my mom, I think she dabbled in white magic. One, because she loved Mother Nature. Um, I kind of follow a little bit of the Wiccan beliefs. I do believe in Mother Earth and the powers that the Earth has, and all the plant life and everything. The trees. I have this affinity for trees, um, but there's so much energy and power out there. Oh gosh, it's just mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
But um, we lived in a house here in Washington about 20 years ago. Um, my kids, we heard a whole bunch of sirens one day. It was a hot summer day, and my daughter and I decided to run upstairs to look out one of the upstairs windows to see, because the fire trucks were coming into the neighborhood. Anyway, we went as we were running up the stairs. There was this real cold area. We didn't have air conditioning, and I'm telling you, it was like 90 in the 90s, and this real cold spot. And I said, "Did you feel that?" And my daughter said, "That's really weird." And anyway, we ran upstairs. We were looking out the windows, and I didn't realize I had my phone in my pocket, and I didn't know that the recorder was on. And it's so bizarre because I took my phone out and I looked at it and I said, "Why is the recorder on?" And I played it back, and just as you could hear us running up the stairs and saying, "Look, do you feel that cold spot?" And just then, this voice on my recorder said, "Excuse me."
Wow.
And we looked at each other. We couldn't believe. I still have the SD card with that on it. Um, I'll have to find it sometime and send it to you. It's really
Yeah, I'd love
bizarre.
to hear it. That's awesome. And if you ever do
Yeah,
send that to me, I'll put it under this episode. Wow.
we had a lot of activity in that house too. And my daughter used to see an old man in her bedroom at and we believed that there was a portal at the top of our stairs. And she told me, she said, Mom, there's an old man that just stares at me. He stands by the door and he's just staring at me, and he's like really old and he looks confused or something. I said, tell him to go back into the light or go through the portal. So she did one night. She got irritated and she said, just go out the door, and the portal's right outside the door. Just go into the portal, go to the light. And she did that, and he walked through the door and she never saw him again.
Wow.
So we have a little spirit that follows us around. My kids will sometimes I'll hear them call me, they'll say Mom, and I'll say what? Excuse me. And they always say, we didn't call you. I don't know what it is, but I hear my daughter-in-law, she'll say Mom, and I'll say what? And she's like sound asleep. I've seen the spirit sitting at my kitchen table and thinking that it was somebody else sitting there. When I turn around and look, they're gone. And I am one of these people that I bring in the light. I have, I do house cleaning all the time, spiritual house cleaning. So I'm not fearful that it's a bad spirit or anything like that. I feel that I'm fully protected, and I'm just not afraid of this stuff. I've lived with it all my life, so there's no reason to fear it now.
Maybe that's why it's around you more, because you don't fear it, And people who do
Oh,
fear it don't really experience it as much. Maybe once or twice, and that's it.
yeah. Um, when my kids were younger, my son, we lived in South Carolina. My husband at the time was in the military. We were in South Carolina, and I had gone in to take a shower, go to work, and I was coming out, and I usually wake my kids up, after I get out of the shower. And I walked into my son's room, and I see him sitting on the floor, and I can hear like Legos or something like that on the floor. And I thought to myself, oh, good, he's up. I don't have to worry about him. So I walked in my daughter's room and woke her up. And then I walked in and got dressed, come back out, and my son is sound asleep in bed. And I said, what are you doing in bed? Get up. You were just up. And he was like, what? And I realized when he rolled over, he wasn't wearing the same clothes that this little boy was wearing that I saw sitting on the floor. And I said, did you change your clothes? He said, no, I got my pajamas on.
Wow.
And I realized then that I wasn't looking at my son. And this little spirit used to play tricks. He'd like to turn the hall light on at nighttime. And I would just, I'd holler at him to turn the lights off, and they would go off. And one night my husband was home. He was a drill sergeant, and so it was rare for him to be home, but he was home, and the light came on in the middle of the night, and he said, who's up? And I said, it's not the kids. And he said, what do you mean it's not the kids? I said, it's the little spirit. We called him David. And anyway, he said, oh, baloney. And I said, just tell him to turn the light off. And he said, turn the light off. And the light went off. And he was like, what the heck? And the light
Wow.
came back on, and he said, no, it's one of the kids. And he jumped up real quick, and both kids were asleep. And I said, just tell him to turn it off. And he said, turn the light off. And the light went off, and he just jumped back in bed, and he was like, I hate this stuff. So we used to hear people talking next door. We were the only people that lived in the building. We'd hear talking. I thought kids broke in, teenagers or something. And I went out one night walking around looking through the windows, and there was nobody in these places. But we'd hear, it would get really loud, and I'd say, be quiet. And it would go quiet. And come to find out, where we lived it used to be the, what do they call them? Where the black soldiers used to live. Um, oh gosh, I can't remember what they called them back then, but during like the Civil War, there were
Mm-hmm.
barracks right there. There was also a medical tent right there where we lived. So really think there was a lot of spiritual activity going on from that. All back east, wherever there was a battlefield or something like that, I see hundreds of people out in the fields. It's really bizarre.
Yeah, it seems to be a lot of experience over there with the Civil War time. The people seeing the spirits and stuff. I've had family living over there, and I can't wait to hear if they experience anything.
Yeah.
They just moved there recently, so we'll see.
Yep. Yep. So I have a Bigfoot story. I have a friend that lives
Yeah, I'd
up
love to hear it.
near the what's that?
Oh, I said, yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Lives at the foothills of Mount Rainier,
Mm-hmm.
and she's lived there her entire life. She was born on the property there. She's in her 80s now. She still lives in there, but the house that she lived in was in disrepair. So it was actually condemned. The county turned off her power. She still has water though. So she lives in a tent on the property. She has a huge garden. And for the past, I don't know, I think she said 20 to 30 years, she has shared her garden with this family of Bigfoot. She said that one night she was asleep and she was laying down in her tent, and it was in the summertime. So she didn't have a rain tarp on top of it. And she was looking up and she could see stars and stuff like that. And um, all of a sudden she heard these footsteps, and she saw this hand um, pressed down on the top of the tent, and it was just pressed very gently on the top of the tent, and she for some reason reached her hand up and met this huge gigantic hand that was coming down on her tent. It wasn't like pushing the tent in or anything, but she touched the hand of this Sasquatch. And she said that um, I relate it to a mind speak, that they weren't there to hurt her, and that they were thanking her for the allowing them to come into her garden, because she had noticed a lot of vegetables and fruits and stuff like that missing. And then she thought she had seen them, but she wasn't sure. Anyway, so since then she made her garden bigger, and she sees them every now and then at the wood line of her property, and she'll leave fruits and vegetables for them. Um, and they always bring her something, a gift of something like a pretty rock, or they'll bring her pine cones that are real pretty. And she lines her fence with everything.
That's
Um,
cool.
and I think that's pretty. She said they're very peaceful, very gentle, and I don't think, I'm sure there's rogue Sasquatch out there, but I don't think all of them are mean and just want to kill you, you know?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. It's like, like I think there is different types, and definitely some that are more aggressive than others, and some that just want to get along and be left alone and coexist with all of us.
Yeah, I absolutely believe that there's other, I don't think they're human, but I don't think they're an ape either. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're a different uh, genus than, I don't know. Uh,
Well, that's the thing. Nobody does. Nobody really knows
yeah,
until
yeah,
you know
exactly. Exactly.
you
And I
know what
think,
you saw, and it probably looked different than what you expect a human and ape would look like.
yeah,
Together.
yeah,
So yeah, that's
yeah.
that's interesting one. Do you know if she's still around up there, or is she?
The last time that we talked to her was probably, it wasn't last year, it was the year before. And I'm pretty sure she's still, because I have other friends that know her too. And I know they have seen her. Um, so I haven't heard that she's gone. So I'm pretty sure, I'm assuming that she's still alive and living there.
Well, yeah, living up in those areas, I feel like people are more healthier and stronger up in those areas, living more up in the remote land.
Yes, absolutely.
I feel like the closer we are to the city, the more toxic and, just it feels like you get sick.
Yeah, so it's illegal to live off grid here in Washington, but she does, and I can't really say her location, but um she has lived there her entire life and she's not about to leave. So,
Well, that's right. That's what I don't like about them being in control of that. We should be able to have the right to go get our land and live the life that we want.
yep, yep, you would think that we
Uh,
could have live our own lives without government interference, but
mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
That's on another
I know
episode we can get into for sure.
that's a whole nother show. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I um so I work um I work on Fort Lewis, I should say. I'm not afraid of anybody hearing me because I'm not trying to impress anybody, and I'm not fearful of other people knowing. So, but I have worked with MPs over the years, and I've talked to several that um last year there was a soldier that went missing, and so they sent MPs. This was close to Mount St. Helens,
Mm.
and so they sent MPs out to look. I think it was like a party of 20 soldiers that went out to look for the soldier, and they said that when they were out there, uh, a couple of times it felt very eerie, that there was like no sound. The trees stopped there. You couldn't hear the wind blowing through the trees. There were no birds making any noise, no other little animals making any noise, and they got a very creepy vibe out of the thing. They felt like they were being watched. And then at one point there was, like, they could hear whistles, and they thought, well, they were by a river, so they thought there was other people down by the river. So they went down closer to the river, and there was nobody down there. They were way back into the woods. And this soldier that went missing, had been rafting down the river, so they were following the river a lot. Anyway, there were several times they heard whistling, and it would come up behind them, and they would kind of like change direction a little bit, and then it would be like in another direction behind them, and they would change direction, and they felt, this one MP that I talked to said he felt like they were directing them to go in a different direction. And when they kept changing direction, it led them to the soldier that they were looking for. And it took them 3 days to find him, but they found him. And of course he was deceased, but they feel, this MP told me that he felt like they were being directed to his location
That's
so they could
interesting.
find him.
That's very interesting. Just
Mount St. Helens has a whole plethora of stories of when it erupted, how many Sasquatch were recovered. There were over 60 bodies recovered
yeah, they've been
after
trying
the
to
eruption.
yeah, they've been trying to cover that up. Every time you bring that up, people be like, "No, that's not true. That's just a story." And I go, "No, it's true." They keep taking down all the videos of people coming forward that witnesses stuff, and yeah, it's interesting.
There is a video I watched on YouTube. It was a few years ago, about the eruption. That and there was a special team brought in by the government to retrieve all these bodies, Sasquatch bodies, and it was a whole clan that they took. They brought them onto Fort Lewis property, which is hundreds of acres. So who knows where they
Hmm.
brought them to? But they did. They brought all these bodies to this one location. There were over 60 bodies, and this interview was it was done by a colonel, Air Force colonel, that was basically talking to everybody, and he was retired, um, but he was also one of the pilots too that was going in and with helicopters and bringing the bodies out.
Yeah, see
So,
that one I remember seeing and hearing about, and you know what? I'm having trouble finding it now. So
go
I find
figure,
that
huh?
interesting, huh? I'll have to dig deeper and see if I can find it. I don't know if I'm putting in the wrong name or what, but I usually didn't have a problem finding it. You know, I when I watched it, it was like about what you said about a couple years ago. So,
Yeah.
and now I'm having trouble finding it. All I hear is stories now about it, and because they would claim they were helping burn Sasquatch, you know,
Yes.
and
Yep.
stuff like that, and they were working with them, helping them, and yeah, it was interesting. So definitely a cover up. I believe there's some kind of cover up going on.
Yeah, I do too. I don't, just because, who's to say they might have a body, but they're not going to disclose it to the general public. So,
Well, that's the
um,
message we need to give to the you know, these researchers and investigators. I think they know everything like 100%. Is that no, they don't know. And you know, I've talked to some loggers. I've talked to other people who had thoughts on this, and they believe 100% there's definitely a cover up, and you know, loggers have experienced them and been told to hush about it. But I heard a lot of the investigators say, "Oh, no, no, that's just made up. That's not true. I used to be involved with logging. It doesn't happen to every logging company, but you know."
oh, not every logging company,
Hmm.
but and I don't think they're just going to be in the where there's a heavily populated, activity going on. I really think they're going to keep going further deeper into the forest to get away from it.
Hmm.
Um, but and if Ron Moorhead is right that they vibrated a different frequency, you're not going to see them.
Hmm.
That's the way I feel. I just feel like you're not going to see them.
Yeah, he had a
They
good
can,
point because you'll follow their, you know, their footprints to a point, and then it disappears. You're like, okay, where'd it go? You know.
uh,
So I find that interesting too, and that's where the portal thing comes involved. And you know, I believe in there's some kind of portal going on, especially because every time somebody has like a, you know, I don't know how much you believe this, but like a dog man sighting, they said they hear like a
right,
metallic sound, and they think these things travel through portals. So
right. Yeah, that other interview that you did with that I guess it was a dog man or Wendigo
yeah,
or something
The
like that.
Ohio dog man, yeah, that guy,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
that was
what a
pretty
terrifying
intense.
experience.
Yeah, I was like, wow, Matt. I go, I could tell he was telling the truth just by listening to his voice, and he's
Yeah,
definitely been, you know, he's been through some, you know, stuff through that, you know, suffering PTSD and other things, you know, from it, and some of his friends, you know, they don't like talking about it, you know, that experienced it with him.
yeah.
So
I get that. It's like with my my experiences, I didn't talk about it for years because, everybody was like, "Oh, you're crazy. You didn't see anything."
yeah,
Well,
I feel you
now at
there
my age,
because
you know what? I don't care. This happened to me, and I don't care who knows, and I don't care what you think about me.
yeah,
This happened to me. You weren't there. I saw it.
yeah,
That's the way I feel.
I totally agree
So,
with you because it took me a while to be comfortable and come out and be like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I believe in this. I'm not going to be quiet anymore. If you don't believe in it, I respect that. You should respect me for what I believe too. If you want to make fun, then
yeah.
go make fun of it with somebody else. I don't have time for that. I don't mind your little jokes, but you know what? We're a believer. If you're not a believer, then you need to go open your mind a little more and go out there and have experience of your own.
That's so funny because that's the way I feel. It's like, oh, you poor thing that you have such a narrow mind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Broaden your mind a little bit.
Yep.
Like your experience, I mean, that clear cut was a ways away, but what you saw, what you saw.
Yeah.
You know that it wasn't some other little animal or something like that. You know what you saw.
It was weird the way it looked and moved, and that's when because usually I'll have my binoculars with me down there because I like to just look around and see if I see anything, you know, like deers or cougars or whatever. And that day I didn't have them with me, and I was like, why didn't I have that with me that day? You know, could have had a better
Yeah.
look at it. I know it was something large, and it just looked like it was, you know, like I said in the video or the I wanted it. Well, I said it on. I don't know if you heard the Lost Frequency. Yeah, I did an episode with those guys. They want to hear my story, and I even do it on my show. But it just moved really fluidly, you know, with the grass. The grass was tall during that time, and it just it was gone. It happened so fast. So was definitely dark looking and larger than a man. Because when I saw that vehicle with the man come out, I was like, whoa, okay, I saw something. Can't confirm it, but I definitely saw something.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Well, I'm very reserved to go into the woods now. I don't my I I'm ordained, so I was my a few years back. My daughter and I went up to. I was doing a wedding for some friends up near Mount Rainier, and it was at this B&B. There was a field where they usually do a lot of these ceremonies. Um, anyway, during the reception, we were up by this pond and we looked down in the field and there were thousands of dragonflies. Well, to me, dragonflies have a spiritual meaning. I have a dragonfly tattoo, and it's something that I believe that it's a harbinger to change and good things. So anyway, I was really impressed with all these dragonflies, and there was a trail that went up into the woods there, and so my daughter and I decided to go up the trail, and we walked in there probably 100 feet, and all of a sudden it just got dead quiet, and my daughter said, "Mom, this doesn't feel good up here. We need to get out of here." And then it was just like it we were s- we don't we're not we're sensitive, but we're not emotional panic type people. um I'm I, people have equated me as being a hippie, so I don't really um you know panic. I don't get excitable and stuff like that anyway. But we had this feeling of urgency to get out of there. We were running back down the trail, and it was like, get out of here. That's the feeling that we got. Get out of here, you're in the wrong area. There was all these little things that were running across the trail in front of us, and I thought they were like little sprites or something like that, little fairies or something that were they were getting out of our way, and they were like, I felt like they were like protecting us. um I wasn't afraid of them or anything like that, but that feeling was so uncomfortable, and I'm just really leery about going back in the woods. And I love being in amongst the trees, but I don't know anymore.
well, I feel that with you because I when I was going out there to go check out that area, I started having like a funny feeling because I was by myself just going to check the area out. Then I go, you know what? I need to do what I said I was gonna do. Bring somebody with me. You know,
Yeah,
just in
yeah,
case, And I was like, because I only made it to, I don't know, probably 20 feet off the road and looked around the area, and I'm not sure if it was the right spot, but I think I was close. And I just had a weird feeling, and I'm like, yeah, I better go with my gut feeling and go back. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I agree with you. We got to learn to live with it, go out there in the woods and enjoy the forest because it is a peaceful thing, and it's a wonderful feeling to be out there. But knowing there's something else going on out there and there's other lives out there. I mean, come on, we do coexist with the cougars and bears and other things, but
hmm,
we just need to be more alert, knowing that there's other things there and be respectful to it.
yeah,
And if we get that
yep,
feeling, we just probably need to leave. If you get that feeling of go, get out of there.
right, yep. Some of the when I was in my 30s, my older brother and I went hunting in Colorado, and we went to oh gosh, now I can't remember the name. Go figure.
It
This is what
happens.
happens when you get older.
No, I don't think age has I don't think the age matters because I forget a lot of things myself.
Anyway, we went hunting, and he had a motorhome. We were in, and his wife and kids were going to meet us like in 2 days. So anyway, we went and we had to cross this creek in his motorhome, and there was a whole bunch of other people there. Anyway, we stopped and parked, and going down this one hill, where just before we went through over the creek, drove through the creek, it was very steep, and you could see down through the valley. And I said to my brother, I said, "Oh my gosh, can you imagine how many Sasquatch live out here?" And he looked at me, his eyes got as big as dishes. And he said, "Do you really think there's Sasquatch?" And I said, "Of course. Why wouldn't there be?" And he said, "I don't I don't want to go elk hunting now." And I said, "Oh, come on. You've been out here how many times? Have you run into one yet?" And so he reluctantly went out hunting. Um, I actually didn't go out hunting with him that day, but and then his wife showed up a day early, and he was so thankful because that meant we were going to get out of there. But it was so funny that he all those years that he used to go every single year in this area, and uh, all of a sudden he just decided not to go. He went out with other people, and he had took extra firepower with him. And I was like, I kept thinking to myself, what you have is it might slow him down just a bit, but it's not going to do anything if you have to. You know, I wouldn't purposely go out there to find when to shoot it, but you know, you have to do what you have to do sometimes. But I just, it's like, why would you be fearful now? But there's always that one chance, that one time that you're going to have an encounter. And my brothers have had their own encounters with different things, but never a Sasquatch. So, and they kind of poo-pooed the first time I told them that mom and I had seen this one. But I think they've opened up to it now. So
Yeah,
it's
I
just kind of
believe.
funny that.
Yeah, I believe we can all have an experience of our own. We just got to be more alert and go in. It's all about the right timing, really. And I mean, I heard podcasters, other ones talk about it too, saying, "Oh, I haven't had experience myself yet," but then I hear they're never going out. So that's why you need to go out there and explore a little bit and check areas out that not a lot of people go, and just be open and checking out new areas, and just that's my thought.
Yeah, I don't think if I were to go back out, I definitely wouldn't go alone. And I'd always make sure that I had some kind of protection with me. So
I agree with you. I used to be able to be fine going alone, and now I have that funny feeling like I should always invite somebody along. And
yeah.
and especially after hearing this hunter story, I was like, all right, you got me a little freaked out when you told me the orange eyes. So
And I've heard so many people talk about the red or the orange eyes, and this one that I saw that it's maybe because it was broad daylight, but then again, other people say they see them in broad daylight with red eyes, and I just didn't experience the same thing, and I'm just wondering what they saw. And it's funny because I work in optometry, and so the red usually comes from uh you know higher blood pressure, more blood to the eyes.
mhm.
Like when you're angry or something like that, can your eye color can change and stuff like that. So with your emotions, but so it's just really, and um,
Yeah,
animals that are nocturnal, they have, because it's the light is bouncing off the retina and stuff, can make the eyes look red at times. Like when you take a picture of an animal and they have red eyes,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
it's that light
Well,
bouncing off the retina
this
that's doing it.
is
So
this is how he explained it. He kind of explained it where it wasn't like a glow or anything like that. He said if you let me think here. I think he brought up like how there's people have like hazel color eyes and there's like glow to it from the
yeah,
sunlight sunlight going in kind of looks a little creepy looking. Well, he said he thinks people are making a mistake with the red eye thing because he thinks because what he saw was orange. He said it looked clearly like orange. He goes, unless I'm colorblind, but he said he's not. And he said it wasn't glowing. It just looked like the color of his eyes. Or I don't know if he said it was a male or female, but I'm pretty sure it was a male because he said it was pretty tall, like 2 feet taller than him, and he's like 6 foot.
mm-hmm.
But he was saying that he could see the eyes looking right through him, and he said you could definitely see like a black pupil in the middle and orange on the outside of it, and he couldn't be clear if
Oh,
there was
okay.
white. So it was pretty detailed on the eyes, and he can see the face too. So that's why it creeped me out because he had a really good look at it, and he
Yeah,
said what he saw was something that was close to like Harry and the Henderson by the looks of it, but the face looked more. He felt like it looked more like a how did he describe? I think he said, how Indians have a certain structure to their face.
yeah.
He said it kind of looked like that, more like human like. He said he doesn't.
Yeah.
He didn't really see an ape type look to it. So,
Right.
so I found that really interesting, and it happened so fast for him. He said that's about what he can remember, and he said he's pretty screwed up about it. It happened really recently too, so that's why it's like, wow. So, and it's only 5-10 miles up the road from me. So,
How bizarre.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that one I saw, it didn't have like an ape type face either. It
yeah.
wasn't quite human, but it wasn't ape either.
Yeah, that's what he
It
was
had a
trying to
different,
compare it to. He said just kind of reminded more human-like in the face, but not human, of course. But he
right.
just said it
Yeah.
had that look,
Uh-huh.
like it was another person looking at you, but it wasn't a person. So
Yeah.
that's the way he felt. He said I didn't feel like it was an animal, you know, and it just felt different to him. He said so.
Yeah. This one that I saw, I remember too that the top of the head was like he had that like male animals do. They have that the sagittal ridge, on the top.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it's called? The sagittal, the like the crown.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I I remember that too. It wasn't really pronounced, but it was there. I noticed it. And then, like I said, I'm pretty sure it was a male when it was running. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but um,
Yeah, I believe these things are like us in a human way. Like we all look different. So I think a lot of them all look different. Like I think Patty was a different type. And I think there's other different
mhm,
types because you get told about red hair looking ones and dark brown hair ones and almost black looking hair ones and
yeah,
some people have white hair sighting ones or gray, maybe it's more gray. But yeah, it's very interesting. I think there is different looking ones, and maybe there's not necessarily different types, just maybe they just all look different, different clans.
right.
So I don't know.
And these stories, these sightings, they go back generations. The
Mhm.
indigenous people. There's cave drawings of these creatures. They go way back. It's not since just Patty. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
they
that's
go
what I
way
always
back.
remind people too. I go because of Patty's film happened, it doesn't say it happened right then. Bigfoot's been around a long, long time, you know,
Yep.
and they just happen to get a good film on, seeing Patty. I think Patty's definitely, I would have to say, 100% real. The way the muscle moves on it, and
Uh,
it looks real. If that's a person in a suit, where in the hell did they come up with that technology for the suit? you know?
I believe it's real as well. I
Yeah.
do. Yep.
A lot of people claim, oh, it's a man in a suit, and I go, no, 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 no. It's look at the muscles. You can see the muscles
Yeah.
moving. So.
And the Patty one was bulkier than the one I saw. Um, but and the hair color was a reddish color.
Mhm.
So it was like it looked very similar, but it didn't have that ape like face, but it wasn't as bulky as Patty. So,
Yeah,
but
if you think Patty, that's where we came in earlier. Like Ron Moore brought up, he believes there's definitely different types, which I
yeah.
think he's probably right because it's
Hmm.
like you said, the description of yours look like a different type, and Patty is definitely a different type. Imagine what the male look if she's that big. You gotta think about the male. What does that one look like? It's gotta look similar to her, much larger for sure.
Larger, yeah.
So
Yeah,
some claim
absolutely.
some claim they see one in the backwoods there. If you look carefully, you'll see a face that looks like another one looking out, watching her. Making sure she's coming out clear. That was kind of new evidence coming forward, but nobody can really back that up.
Ooh, I'll have to look.
Yeah, look into it because it was a YouTube channel popping up saying if you look carefully, it looks like there's another one standing in the back in the tree lines where she starts walking away. And if you
Uh,
look carefully behind, you'll see like a face figure of one. Looks exactly the way her face would look, but bigger. So I think that might have been the male. So
yeah, I'll have to check that out.
'cause I don't think these things travel alone. I think they travel in a group. Maybe there is a rogue, like you said, once in a while. The ones that get are bad or just want to be on their own. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's lots of stories of families of these things, and you know, they bring their kids out to teach them how to forage, and
yeah, and that's another thing too is people don't look up in the trees all the time. If you look up, you might see something when you're out hiking
yeah,
around. So Because if you think about when
Yeah,
you're hiking, you're looking at your footing, you're looking at where you're walking, and then you're looking around a little bit, but you're looking where you're going. You don't really look up
very
in the
cool.
trees all the time, and I hear that a lot. So,
I do too. Yeah, I've heard that a lot too.
well, Cheryl, is that pretty much what you had for us to share?
Yep, yep,
Well,
that's my
I
encounters.
really enjoyed you having on, and I know this took us what 2 or 3 attempts to get going.
Yep, third time's a charm.
It seems to be, huh?
Yeah.
So, well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I'll have you holding for a second, and
Thanks for having me on.
yeah, and if you ever experience anything else, be sure to share it,
Will.
and definitely share that voice recording when you get it.
I'll have to look for that. Yep.
Right on. All right, thank you,
All right.
Cheryl.
Thanks, Blake.
Well, guys, that's the show. I hope you really enjoyed it. I enjoyed having Cheryl on. She really told us some really interesting experience and other people's experience and much more. So I really appreciate her coming on. If you enjoyed the show, and if you enjoyed the show, please share, rate, follow, and make a comment on the episode you like. I would sure appreciate it, guys. And if you had an encounter, please email me at mountainmanett@gmail.com. Again, mountainmanett@gmail.com. Or you can private message me on Facebook, Blake Botel, Botel. Again, Botel. So, if you guys want to come on, hit me up. Sure would enjoy to have you on. Until next time, guys, let's explore the truth together.